I don't care where you go. Victoria's voice rang through the neighborhood as she stood in the doorway of what had been our family home for the past 12 years. My children, Emily, 10, and Marcus, 8, huddled close to me on the sidewalk, their small hands clutching garbage bags filled with whatever belongings they had managed to grab before Victoria changed the locks. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 35, I never imagined I'd be standing on the street watching my sister-in-law laugh as my children cried. Just 3 months after losing my husband James to a car accident, his sister Victoria has shown her true colors. "This house is mine now," she smirked, waving the deed she'd somehow convinced James to sign over to her before his death. "Your kids crying won't change anything. You should have thought about this before letting James put everything in my name." I held Emily and Marcus closer as they trembled against me. The autumn wind whipped around us, scattering leaves across the lawn I carefully tended for over a decade. Inside, I could already see Victoria rearranging furniture, acting as if we had never existed. "Victoria, please," I tried one last time, my voice steady despite the fear churning in my stomach. "The kids have school tomorrow. Just give us a few days to find somewhere to go." She laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Not my problem. You're resourceful, aren't you? Figure it out." The door slammed shut with finality, leaving us alone as the sun began to set. Emily looked up at me, her brown eyes, so much like her father's, filled with tears. "Mom, where are we going to sleep?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Don't worry, sweetie, we'll figure something out." But as I stood there, watching my children shiver in the growing darkness, I had no idea what our next move would be. The local motels were beyond our budget. Victoria had somehow gained access to our joint accounts 2 weeks ago, leaving them empty. My salary as a part-time bookkeeper barely covered our basic needs, and now we didn't even have a roof over our heads. As I loaded our meager belongings into our old Honda, my mind raced through our options. My parents had passed years ago, and most of our friends were really James's friends. They had slowly disappeared after his death, uncomfortable with a widow's grief. "Mom?" Marcus's small voice broke through my thoughts. "Why does Aunt Victoria hate us?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How could I explain to an 8-year-old that his aunt's hatred stemmed from years of jealousy and resentment? That Victoria had never forgiven James for choosing to marry me instead of following her plan for him to join her business venture. "She doesn't hate us, sweetheart," I lied, helping him buckle his seatbelt. Sometimes adults make decisions that are hard to understand. As we drove away from our home, I caught one last glimpse of Victoria in the window, already on the phone, probably calling her friends to brag about her victory. The sight made something shift inside me, a quiet determination taking root where despair had threatened to overwhelm. We ended up at Sarah's house, my colleague from work. She took one look at us standing on her doorstep and immediately ushered us inside. "Stay as long as you need," she insisted, helping the kids settle onto her living room couch. That night, after Emily and Marcus had finally fallen asleep, I sat at Sarah's kitchen table, staring at my phone. Text messages from Victoria kept arriving, each one more gloating than the last. "Redecorating tomorrow, throwing out all your tacky decorations. The kids' rooms will make perfect home offices. Should have made sure James left something for you in writing." I blocked her number, my hands steady despite the anger coursing through me. Victoria thought she had won, thought she had broken us. She had no idea that her cruelty had just lit a fire inside me that would change everything. The next morning, while the kids were at school, I met with a lawyer. James' old college friend, Michael Bennett, listened intently as I explained everything. The suspicious deed transfer, the drained bank accounts, Victoria's sudden claim to everything we had built. "Something's not right here," Michael said, frowning as he reviewed the documents. James was meticulous about legal matters. He wouldn't have just signed over the house without telling you. And these bank transfers, they don't match his signature pattern. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since Victoria had shown up with that deed. "What are you saying?" Michael leaned forward, his expression serious. "I'm saying we need to look closer at when these documents were signed and how Victoria might have overplayed her hand." As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Victoria's cruel eviction: purpose. She thought she had taken everything from us, but she had forgotten one crucial thing. I had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. That evening, as I tucked Emily and Marcus into their temporary beds at Sarah's house, Emily grabbed my hand. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I kissed her forehead, my resolve strengthening. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be more than okay. Sometimes life has a way of teaching people important lessons." Victoria had no idea what was coming. She thought she had written the end of our story, but really she had just set the stage for her own downfall. And I was going to make sure justice was served, not just for my children, but for James's memory too. 3 months after our eviction, Victoria's perfect world started to crack. I was working late at Sarah's dining table, reviewing documents Michael had uncovered when my phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made my coffee go cold. Local business owner under investigation for financial fraud. There was Victoria's company photo, her practiced smile now looking more like a grimace. The article detailed suspicious transactions, falsified documents, and questionable business practices. But what caught my eye was the time frame. The investigation focused on the months leading up to James's death. Michael called minutes later. "Olivia, turn on the local news. They're raiding Victoria's offices right now." I watched the live coverage, my hands shaking as I recognized faces from James' old workplace being escorted out in handcuffs. Victoria wasn't among them, yet. "There's more," Michael said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Remember those bank transfers? We traced them. Victoria didn't just empty your accounts. She'd been siphoning money from James's business accounts for months before his death. The signatures on those transfers, they were dated after the accident." My blood ran cold. She forged his signature. Not just on the bank documents, Michael confirmed. That deed she used to claim the house. The notary just confirmed they never signed it. Victoria forged everything, Olivia. She's been planning this since before James died. The pieces started falling into place. Victoria's constant presence after James' accident, her insistence on helping with paperwork, the way she'd slowly isolated us from family friends. She hadn't just stolen our home, she orchestrated an entire scheme. The next morning, I dropped the kids at school and headed to my old neighborhood. Victoria had transformed our modest family home into a showcase of her newfound wealth. Expensive cars in the driveway, professional landscaping replacing the garden the kids and I had planted together. As I parked across the street, a familiar figure rushed out the front door. Victoria looked nothing like the confident woman who had thrown us out months ago. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her hair disheveled, and her face pale with panic. She spotted my car and froze. For a moment, our eyes met across the street. I didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't give her any reaction at all. I just watched as she scrambled into her Mercedes and sped away. "She's running," I texted Michael. His response was immediate. "Police are already on their way. Don't worry, she won't get far." That evening, the local news painted a devastating picture of Victoria's crimes. Not only had she embezzled from her own company, but she also forged documents and stolen identities, including her dead brothers, to secure loans and properties. Sarah watched the coverage with me after the kids were asleep. "I can't believe she thought she'd get away with this," she said, shaking her head. "She always thought she was smarter than everyone else," I replied, remembering Victoria's smug smile the day she had evicted us. She never expected anyone to look too closely at her perfect life. The next day, Michael called with news that changed everything. "The FBI found Victoria's laptop," he said. "You won't believe what was in her emails. She'd been planning this for years, Olivia. There are messages to accomplices discussing how to forge James's signature, how to transfer assets without raising suspicion, even." He paused, his voice hardening. "Even discussions about James' accident not being an accident at all." I sat down hard, my legs giving out. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the FBI is expanding their investigation. This isn't just about fraud anymore. Victoria may have been involved in James's death." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those months of grieving, of trying to hold our family together, while Victoria had orchestrated everything from the shadows. Later that week, as I helped Emily with her homework at Sarah's kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Victoria. "Please, Olivia, I need your help. They're going to arrest me. Think about family. Think about James. I can make things right." I showed the message to Michael, who immediately forwarded it to the FBI. Within hours, they tracked Victoria's location to a small motel just outside the city limits. The news showed her being let out in handcuffs, her perfect facade finally shattered completely. That night, as I tucked my children into bed, still in Sarah's guest room, but not for much longer, Emily asked the question I had been dreading. Mom, is Aunt Victoria going to jail? I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. Yes, sweetheart. She did some very bad things, and now she has to face the consequences. Marcus, always the sensitive one, looked troubled. But she's family, right? Shouldn't we help her? I pulled them both close, breathing in the scent of their freshly washed hair. Sometimes, honey, people who are supposed to be family make choices that hurt us. And when that happens, we don't have to keep them in our lives. As they drifted off to sleep, I thought about Victoria sitting in a jail cell, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She had thought she'd won when she threw us out on the street, but she'd forgotten something crucial. The truth always finds its way to the light. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, I stood in front of our old house, keys in hand. The court had reversed all of Victoria's fraudulent property transfers, returning our home to its rightful owners, my children and me. Emily and Marcus ran ahead, eager to reclaim their old rooms. Everything looked smaller, Emily observed, her hand trailing along the banister James had installed when she was learning to walk. The house still bore traces of Victoria's brief ownership, gaudy wallpaper, pretentious furniture she'd bought with stolen money. But underneath it all, our home's bones remained unchanged. Like us, it had weathered the storm and survived. That morning, I had received a letter from Victoria's prison. Her handwriting, once so precise and elegant, now looked shaky and uncertain. Olivia, the prosecutors offered me a deal. They'll reduce my sentence if I provide information about James' accident. I know I don't deserve your help, but please, I'm desperate. Prison is killing me. Just talk to them. Tell them I've changed. Victoria. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket, remembering the night she'd thrown us out, the way she had laughed at my children's tears. The investigation had revealed the full scope of her crimes. Not only had she forged documents and stolen our home, but she had also been involved in orchestrating the accident that took James from us. Her desperation now felt like poetic justice. Mom, Marcus called from upstairs. Can we paint my room blue again? Like it was before. Of course, sweetheart, I answered, climbing the stairs. We can make this house ours again. Later that evening, as we sat on boxes eating takeout pizza, Michael stopped by with the final paperwork from the court. Victoria's sentencing is next week, he said, watching the kids explore their old new home. With the evidence they have, she's looking at 20 years minimum. Good, I said simply. The woman who had thought she could steal our lives, who had played a role in taking their father from them, deserved every minute of those years. A week later, I sat in the courtroom, watching Victoria in her prison jumpsuit as she pleaded for leniency. Gone was the designer wardrobe, the imperious attitude, the certainty that she could control everything and everyone around her. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood, my voice clear and steady. A year ago, this woman, my children's aunt, threw us onto the street without mercy. She laughed at their tears, stole their inheritance, and as we now know, played a role in their father's death. She showed no compassion then and deserves none now. Victoria crumpled in her seat as the judge delivered her sentence minus 25 years. No possibility of early parole. That evening, as I tucked the kids into their own beds, in their own rooms, for the first time in over a year, Emily asked, "Is it wrong that I don't feel sad about Aunt Victoria?" I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. No, sweetheart. Sometimes people make choices so bad that they lose the right to be part of our lives. What matters is that we're together, and we're home. Months passed, and slowly, our house became truly ours again. We replanted the garden, repainted the walls, and created new memories to replace the painful ones. Victoria's expensive furniture was sold, the money going to a fund for victims of financial fraud. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a photo album from happier times. James and Victoria as children, smiling, innocent. I wondered when she had changed, when greed and jealousy had twisted her into someone capable of destroying her own family. The last message I received from Victoria came on the anniversary of our eviction. I underestimated you, Olivia. I thought you were weak, that you'd never fight back. I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Her apology, like everything else about her, came too late and meant too little. Today, our home rings with children's laughter again. Emily and Marcus are healing, growing stronger every day. Sometimes, when I watch them play in the yard or do homework at the kitchen table, I think about how Victoria's cruelty ultimately led to justice, not just for us, but for everyone she had hurt. She thought throwing us out would break us. Instead, it made us unbreakable.